Hi, I am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Let's Talk. And we are interviewing school board candidate Mr. Shivy Brooks, District 7 at large. And I'm just going to go right on into it. I feel like I know you, and I don't know you, but I know you because you've been such an activist.
Yeah, yes. We've had the opportunity to kind of march out in the streets together for teachers in the past. So it's an honor to be sitting with you today, knowing that you're a person who's been at the forefront of leadership for our teachers. It means a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's an honor to have a teacher to come out on the front lines, too.
Yes, yes.
Are you currently teaching?
I am. I actually left my classroom to come be here with you all today. All my kids were saying, Mr. Brooks, what you dressed up so nice for today? And I got an opportunity to tell them I was hanging out with some important people.
Well, honestly, I have seen you dressed up every time. You're always dapped.
Thank you.
And we were joking, y'all, off camera. Now, candidates, don't get jealous. I was talking about Eddie Kendricks. Keep on trucking, baby. Because, you know, he was a fashion plate, and this young man is a fashion plate.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell us about your teaching experience and how long you've been in Atlanta Public Schools, quickly.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So I've been a certified teacher for the last 8 years. I teach at Charles Drew High School in Clayton County, which is a 100% Title I district and a Title I school. But I live in the Grant Park area, where I'm looking to be the first active teacher to ever serve. I've also had the opportunity to work as a substitute teacher prior to teaching at Charles Drew as well as Wesley prior to getting my teacher certification.
Is there a conflict with you being a teacher and serving on a board of education in another school district?
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you bring that up. I have lobbied for the last 3 years to get the charter to the Atlanta Public School Board changed, which would allow a teacher outside of the city of Atlanta to serve on the board so long as they live within the city. It had been a rule until this year that a teacher could not serve on the board and be an active teacher at the same time. So I worked with Representative Park Cannon and Senator Jason Estevez to get the legislation passed this year. It was signed into law by Governor Kemp actually a few weeks after my son Bryce passed away. So this is work that I've been on for a long time, not just to my own benefit, but to make sure that teachers throughout the city of Atlanta get an opportunity to serve on the board, because I believe we're best equipped to do the job.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. So Governor Kemp did something else good, huh?
Well, we got something through. I'll say that. All right, we got a bunch of education bills coming up this year that I'm hoping will not see the light of day.
Exactly. One being those vouchers.
Correct. That is one of the things that I've been pushing hard against for a very long time. In fact, I challenged then Democratic Representative Misha Maynor on Revolt TV about it prior to her disclosing that she was truly a Republican. But I've always felt that, you know, vouchers essentially are a way for them to try to defund public education and get rid of access for all kids to a quality public education.
So tell us, why are you running for Atlanta schools?
Yeah, I'm running for Atlanta Public School Board for several reasons. Number one, the budget of our school board is way inflated at central office. We're spending 60% of every dollar that we garner in revenue on the central office and only 40% on the classroom. And I have a huge issue with that. Secondly, our teachers are paid a low income wage. We don't pay our teachers enough to afford to live in the city. If I didn't marry well, I wouldn't live in the city. My wife is a registered nurse and she does nursing informatics at Northside Hospital. But without that two-family income, I couldn't afford to live here.
And nurses need more money too.
And nurses need more money too. So in our household, we definitely understand what it looks like to serve our community, but also be undervalued for what we do. But making sure that we raise our teacher base salary, for me, it should be at least $65,000 for a starting salary for a teacher in the city of Atlanta. But also making sure that we have a quality education available to all of our kids. Our achievement gap in Atlanta is abysmal and has a lot to do with the only 4% chance that we have for anyone born into poverty to ever escape it. If we don't do something about our schools, we will continue to have concentrated poverty and the worst wealth disparity gap that lives in the country.
We hear a lot of talk about different programs and nonprofits and et cetera, all these initiatives that they have. I've heard that for many, many, many years, and just this is my own personal opinion. They look good on paper.
Right.
They may show us 5 or 6 kids that they're doing something about, but then they're leaving behind another 600.
Right.
So how can we comprehensively help our children not only be business owners, be trained in particular skills, read well, etc., and the parents
Right.
at the same time?
Right.
How can we help both? Just give us some
Yeah,
ideas.
well, you kind of get me three things there, right?
Yeah.
So there's a literacy piece, but also like there's obviously like the literacy problem we have with our kids. Like only 2 out of 3 kids are not reading on grade level in Atlanta. Only 1/3 reading on grade level. But when it comes to Black children, we're looking lower, like 25% or below, depending on the grade level. That's a huge issue, and the literacy part is going to have to also include our families, because many folks know we have generational education gaps
Yes.
that we have to overcome. God bless you.
Generational, exactly.
And so unless we do something to be intentional about adult literacy, there's very little that we're going to be able to do just for our
the
youth
children.
literacy as well, right? Because who's going to help them at night? Now, what I know is the big determinant in terms of a child's ability to read on grade level or above is a couple things, and it has nothing to do with our control as a school. How many of them are having their parents read to them at night from the cradle to age 5? Makes a huge difference. How many of them have literature, text, physically available to them at home? Makes a big difference. I talk to my students all the time about literacy. In fact, I had an intentional conversation with them last week, because as I'm running for office and everyone's like, what can we do to raise literacy? I'm like, well, first off, let's stop talking to adults and talk to the kids.
Oh,
Let's try that.
right.
And what I heard from the kids was 2 things. Number one, their cell phones are a huge distraction. And it's hard to pay attention when you constantly have this thing pinging off.
That's right.
While you should be focused on attaining the skill to read. The second thing that I heard is that they just don't have books available. Like many of the kids, I asked them, I said, what books do you have at home? And the answer is the Bible.
Right. Or they don't have literature that they want to read.
And that's the part. So if the Bible is all they have, they surely don't have literature that appeals to them, especially at a time in the South where we are making it illegal for them to have access to books with characters who look like them. So we have to make text much more easily available to our kids. And when we talk about these partnerships and things like that, that really looks like, for me, easing access to literature that kids are interested in. But then we also have to look at what can we do to get our kids interested in reading, because there is a desire gap that exists among many of our kids to read.
That's right.
But again, it's all comprehensive, because if the kids see their parents reading, they're more likely to sit down and read. But if the parent is sitting on the cell phone telling them to read a book, the wires are going to get crossed. It doesn't necessarily work that way.
So you are a parent.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Shivy, I'm calling him by his first name, y'all. It's really Brooks you're going to look for on that. Well, either Shivy, because that's a hard
Shivy.
name, right? Chevy.
Shivy.
Like the car, but Chevy.
No, Shivy. Shivy. It's a
Shivy.
Blackfoot Indian word that means prince.
Oh,
My father's side of the family is Blackfoot, so that's where it derives from.
Okay.
And that's what it means.
all right. Now, I've had some ideas as the other candidates have been speaking.
Well, no, before you get to that, he missed one because you asked so many
Oh
questions.
yeah, what was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the other one?
Entrepreneurship.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
So, you know what? I personally feel like one of the biggest missteps for public education, especially at the high school level, is that we prepare kids to be good employees for other people. And most of our kids
To get a good job, get a good education.
well, and then worse than that, we say, do well in school,
Yeah.
get a scholarship, go to a good college, get a good degree, get a good job, and move. And it causes brain drain in our communities over and over and over again. I cannot stress how badly that thought process needs to be dismantled. And I think the only way to really do that is that while not all of our kids are intended to be an employee for someone else, I guarantee you many of them are intended to be a boss to somebody else.
Yes.
And what that means is they need to have access to skills and trades that offer them the opportunity to be job creators and not just job takers. So for me, that looks like bringing back our apprenticeships. For me, that looks like bringing back some of our skilled labor jobs. And many times the unions are perfectly positioned to partner with the schools to give access to these kids. I walk out of my school and I see a banner out there every day, and it says, now hiring, HVAC, plumbing, welding, all these things, right? None of them we teach.
Right.
None of them we offer anymore. But these are all the jobs and the skills that we want our kids or adults to come take to work for our schools. So to me, that shows a huge misalignment. And something that we really do have to recenter ourselves on, because financial freedom is not necessarily coming from working for folks. So for many of our kids in today's time, much like myself, yes, I'm a teacher, but I'm also a successful entrepreneur, as a consultant for other schools, as a social media personality, if you will. And many of my kids aspire to do the same things that I do, and they know it just requires that phone in their pocket. But they also need the skill sets to be able to realize the promise that they have. So they need someone to teach them about content creation, about SEO. There are new skills that are kind of the plumbing and welding of today, that feed what I call the attention economy of now, the social media economy of now, that our kids need to be learning film. They need to be learning video editing. All these folks who you have behind these cameras and these lights right now, who I'm sure you're paying a pretty penny to do.
Stage setting, costumes, writing, yeah.
And these are things that our kids can do in high school, and many of them are. They're YouTubers, they're TikTokers, they're Instagrammers, and some of them have huge platforms. I have students with over 400, 500,000 followers in my classroom, but they don't know how to monetize it. And that, for me, is an area that would definitely have our kids' attention, but also would prepare them for the jobs of tomorrow.
If you open in the middle schools, or either started
Correct.
5th grade level, going on up to high school, if you open that class up talking about, we're going to teach you how to make some money, you got their attention.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what the pandemic has done. People talk about, why has enrollment gone down so low? Where have all of the kids gone? What no one talks about is, especially for high school kids, while COVID was going on and we were virtual, you know what kids were doing? They had their AirPod in. They had the phone propped up on that register while they were working at Walmart, while they were working at Goodwill, while they were driving Uber, while they were doing these things. They were taking classes while making money.
So who's defining the learning gap then? Such a learning gap behind COVID. We lost so much, people say, intellectually.
Yeah.
So where's that coming from?
That's an interesting thing. I look at, as a teacher, I look at COVID, because the learning loss is real. Like, let there be no mistake, right? Our kids are not reading at the same level. They are not as engaged. They are more socially awkward. They have more social emotional deficits than they did before. It's a new day. And to that point, I've heard it pointed out by one of my opponents that there are currently teachers who have taught in the classroom on the board now, and that, we've got enough teachers, essentially. But the truth is if you have not been in the classroom since the pandemic, you really don't know what you're talking about. Because what it looks like to teach in the classroom now is completely different. The child we teach is completely different. And if you don't understand the nuances of that, you could plan out the best curriculum.
And some of those changes, some of those differences were there before COVID. People just weren't talking about.
And they just got exacerbated, right? Yeah. They got worse. But it is one of those things that I believe we have to be very intentional about addressing, that learning loss thing. But here goes the part. 600,000 people were lost in America due to COVID. 600,000. During the Civil War, 600 Americans were lost during the Civil War.
And when you say lost
to the war.
And lost to
during
COVID.
The 4 years of the Civil War, there were 60,000 people dead because of the Civil War. COVID, 600,000 people plus lost their lives because of COVID in a 1 to 2 year span, right? When we look back in history and we teach about Civil War and those type of things, no one talks about learning loss. No one talks about, well, what were the kids doing at that time? What happened with schools? No one talks about that. So I feel like we are not paying enough respect to how impactful this event was for our kids, beyond just they weren't in the school building. I remember school shutting down in March of 2020. The first concern was food insecurity. Many of our kids didn't have food at home. Coming to school was the way that they ate at least 2 meals a day. They had breakfast, they had lunch there, right? So now they did not have that food security that they once had. That caused a big issue. Many of my students, I had several students who lost parents from COVID in early 2020. And that has a major impact, and no one talks about that. So my feeling is this school year in particular is probably the first school year we've gotten back that's been anything like normal. anything like normal.
And they're not locally talking about it.
Correct.
Yeah, because the American Federation of Teachers has been addressing it, and I think the NEA has also. But we don't have, we got about 8 or 9 different voices for teachers here in the city of Atlanta, and half of them don't belong to anything. But I'm just saying, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But no, I agree with you. I think right now we're looking at what are the effects on our babies, right? Like how much trauma have they experienced since? And I think the most effective thing we could have done was been hyper focused on the social, emotional health and wellness of our kids as we started returning into school before we started getting hyper focused on academics. For me, the thing that makes me effective in my classroom and why I get paid by school systems throughout the country to share my best practices is that I focus on the social, emotional well-being of my kids first.
In other words, you focus on the person.
Absolutely. Because if we're not focused on our kids, then it's. But listen, guess what?
Tell me you focus on the person and not the test?
If you continue to elect people who don't serve in classrooms and have never served in classrooms, they will think about it just by the numbers. And they'll be
out of classrooms not to serve.
Right. So
not my interview, but
what we don't want is people who make policy that is completely sterile and without perspective of the human experience as well.
Or coming with an agenda.
Correct.
They're not telling the public about.
Yeah.
That's why we tell people, look at who's financing the candidates.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I have a question. As a board, how do we govern effectively? Because Atlanta is big.
Yeah.
You have more areas that have more white people than you have more areas that have African Americans. How do we govern effectively to each area that has its own unique characteristics?
Yeah, I think you need somebody who can dwell in all of the different spaces. I came here from a Buckhead Rotary meeting, which looks very different than this side of town, right? But I'm also able to navigate those spaces in those rooms. I'll go over to Cleveland Ave somewhere. I live over in Custom McDonough Geist, which is on the border between Thomasville and Grant Park. So you need someone who can navigate all different areas, talk to all different voices, and I think that's extremely important. You have to have that, especially for a citywide seat. It's very different than your district seats. This person has to be all of Atlanta. You can't just be a part of Atlanta. And if you don't have that, it comes out in policy and it comes out in votes. One of my opponents only will vote for central office all the time, voted against a budget which gave a raise to teachers, but the rationale for doing it wasn't enough funding going towards the non-Title I schools. So we have to look at like what makes a person go. And who do they listen to? Who has their ear? And probably more importantly, who has their mouth? So to that effect, I love being a free man. I love being a person who is about the teachers, who is about our people. That, I think, is what is going to be very different. I offer Atlanta the opportunity to have a school board member who won't be quiet when crazy legislation comes out from the state. I offer Atlanta the opportunity to have someone who not only is a teacher, but I was a public policy major at the Andrew Young School of Public Policy, graduated at the top of my class, and my school is ranked higher than Harvard, by the way. So I offer like a nice combination of some things that we really could use on the school board. I'm not just a teacher saying, hey, I'm a teacher wanting to run. I'm a teacher who has a lot of relationships at every level of government. I've been effective in getting legislation passed. When you see police officers driving through the city with steady blue lights on, thank me. When teachers are able to run for school board and be there, thank me. And I've been able to do that without being elected. And it's the work that I would continue to do whether elected or not. But I also understand what it will mean, especially to black men looking to go into education, to see a black man sitting on that board who's a teacher. I know what it will mean to our black boys who maybe are dealing with a tribunal, knowing that there's somebody up on that dais who looks like them, been through things they've been through and understands them as well. We need that.
So you're running for school board for all of Atlanta.
Don't get me in trouble.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm just prophesying a little bit, but anyway, maybe that might get you in trouble. But
they already say I'm. What was the criticism? I'm using school board as a political stepping stone or some nonsense like that. It's I appreciate that people see the promise in me.
Well, you might better utilize it than some folk who've used it for a stepping stone.
Right. I do have another question. Well, you mentioned a voice. I found that not all of the current school board members don't speak up enough against facilities.
Right.
we need a strong voice to let facilities know when they're wrong, because they impact a lot. Case in point, let's take the school building that's behind the Ali at Lakewood building. Originally, the construction costs were $8 million. Because of the delay of facilities, 4 years later, now that construction cost is $13 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's $5 million difference that's going to roll back to the taxpayers, roll back to the tenants, and it makes it more difficult for affordability. Do you think you have the ability to tell facilities no?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's about being in tune with the community. You have to understand where some of these surplus buildings are. What are the demographics of the area? Mm-hmm. Is it a piece of property that the Atlanta School Board could benefit from retaining, or is it something that is inappropriate and more costly for you to retain? Yeah. And so in the case of the building you're talking about, I happen to live on the other side of the train tracks from the Ali development. And I remember when it was an abandoned building. I remember when it was just a basketball hoop close to the corner, and the kids would be shooting out there until somebody started fighting or something else happened. And that was what that corner was. You didn't want to stop at that light too long, and you surely didn't want to be there at night. Now you have sit-down restaurants, coffee houses, spas, things that were never available in that community before. That building, the school building, is sitting basically in a rear parking lot right behind you. Now, I don't know that, first off, even if you could put a school there or you desired to, I don't know that you would want to put a school so close to a commercial development in the first place. So there's that part. The other part is there's no local elementary school around that building that has capacity over 35%. So to me, it does not necessitate retaining that building to be developing or building anything for APS schools in that area. To me, it just does not, it doesn't logistically, financially, or demographically make sense.
Okay.
Okay. Tell us why Atlanta can't keep a superintendent. Now, but let me preface that. Some of those superintendents I and my board and some members know should not have ever been there.
Right.
But what's the problem with our keeping a superintendent?
Yeah.
And what do we need going forward?
For me, it's two things. I'll say the most important thing second, but just my own personal desire is that I would never vote for a superintendent who's never served in a school. And I think you got to start there. Our schools are not just businesses. Our schools are not just corporations, right? Our schools are centers for hope. Mm-hmm. They are centers for learning. They are hubs in our community. Like, they mean something more. And so if you don't know what it looks like to serve in that capacity, you're probably not the right person to be leading it. I take big issue with superintendents paid, 10 times as much as an educator, having never served in a school, telling teachers what to do in the classroom. So that's number one. Number two, we also have to make sure that the process is done right. I actually take issue with how the process is being done right now, because in order to retain a superintendent, and this is true not just for Atlanta, but any school district, you have to have a shared vision between that superintendent and the board. Now, why I bring this up as an issue right now is that, number one, this particular school board within the past week or two has decided to hire a search firm. And they did this just weeks before voting. This is like a president putting up a Supreme Court justice right before election. It would be improper, and this is what they started to do. So now here's the big issue, though, and what I think kind of becomes a booby trap for the future board. They have created a superintendent profile that they have created as a board that they have given to these different search firms, and they picked a search firm based upon a profile that the current board has decided. Mm-hmm. But that board will not be in place in just a few weeks. So now when the new board comes in with the firm that they chose, who happens to be the firm that chose the last superintendent,
right,
that they voted out.
That's right.
Yeah.
The whole process is a farce.
I
said that in one interview already. It's nothing but a pile of farce.
Mm-hmm. So I really take issue with that, because this the candidates, when I intend to win, and when they're going to come with a pool of candidates that are based upon a vision and a look that the old school board wanted, mm-hmm. And it's like it's like Dion going out to Colorado, right? What did he do? When he went over there, he let go of all the kids and put them in the portal, right? And certain ones he kept, and it was just a few, right? And then he brought in his own team. No coach wants to go in with this team already there that you didn't get to pick. And that's essentially what this school board is doing. They're already picking the team, and without giving a fair chance to the voters to decide who they want in office, to be picking the firm that will pick the pool, that will give you the candidates that you will be hiring.
That's a really good point, yeah.
All right, so sometimes it's difficult, as you've said, and there's more layers to that too, for boards of educations to navigate, because there are people who have served on the board. Some still have tentacles right back to that board, or some folk on the board to make votes go a certain way. You know, we tell us why. Now you have there are two people in your race. One person is the incumbent. Why would you be the best candidate?
I've actually done the job before. I've actually served in our schools before. I'm actually connected with our students and our community. I offer us the opportunity to add voices that are missing on the board. We have 9 seats. Currently, none of them are occupied by a man, but most especially a black man. And that there is a detrimental effect to not having those voices at the table. It is not reflective of the city. And we could be doing a lot better by our city by making sure that we have a diversified range of voices there at the table.
Mr. Brooks, I want you to give some thought, because some of the candidates I've talked to, I've just taken some personal privileges to. I will put in together there's only minority voices. And what I mean by that, we're talking about African American, Latino, some Asians, of course, just minority voices. I don't care what sex. And putting a board together that would be another type of board of education.
All right.
And this board itself would also hopefully get the ear of the governor and the legislators. In other words, we're non-elected. We're elected ourselves. Okay. And with this, anything and everything that goes on, we'll have public opinion about it. We'll push it out. You know, I used to try to get some legislators, and I voted blue most of my life. I voted blue. Of course, every now and then now I vote red. And I voted based on what influencers told me when I didn't know. But I don't necessarily, just because of the position I serve in now, I never would have known, just listen to my pastor anymore. Or just listen to some radio personality, or a person who held a position, or got a position just so that they could, you know, bounce off into the water. But we need sincere people that's thought-minded, and they may not have any rank, that will be able to make sure that things are shaken up, because we know that news stories are only so long, and a lot of that's controlled too. We also know that there are various organizations put in place, and they're titulars of information. And some of them, I don't care, it may look like me. And then we know that there's another part of town that's lily white and filthy rich. And we don't ever know what's going on in that part of town. We know that everybody is concerned about getting the most for their money. But we don't have one in Atlanta. And we don't have people who are speaking out without being bought out or self-serving for the community. So, you know, I used to ask a particular folk who were, so, you know, had the cameras and attention over at the State House, sitting in black districts, to say, help us with this. And I never could get them to say one magic word. And I don't know, you know, why. I got my own reasons why, but I want you to give some thought to that, because you're young and you're a worker and you're trying to be effective, I see. About, you're in a district at large. People, you're gonna need money. You need people and you need money. Are there any special interests? I haven't asked that of anybody else. Is there any special interests that you represent? I should have asked that of all candidates.
Yeah, no, I have no special interest that I represent. We did just receive the endorsement of Equity in Education, which we definitely appreciate, because I know that these are all community organizers who are behind that organization, people who I've actually known throughout the years, who have done good work. But that is the only organization that has supported us. But I think if you take a look at my life, if you take a look at my social media, if you take a look at my walk, it's very clear that there are no ulterior motives with me. You know, I'm not in the bag of any development company. I'm not in the bag of any particular special interest or anything to that effect. I'm in the bag of the community. That's who I am accountable to. Much of my perspectives about everything dealing with education can be cross-checked if you go look at my Instagram. You will know exactly how I feel because I share it with 80,000 plus people every single day. And my community consists predominantly of educators who are all looking to get better results for our kids.
So you're going to have to get, with the 9 people on that board, you're going to need 5 votes.
Yep.
How is the board trained, and who should be training the board?
Well, you know, so our board development committee, I think, is kind of one of those areas where we're a little bit bloated at the top. Like, there's so much that goes on there that I'm like, do you need to be doing all of the things that you're doing? I think our board really, you see the deficit of training and needs because they've never done it before. So when you actually bring in people who have been there before, I think there's a lot of knowledge capital that already goes into how we make decisions. Right now, student outcomes-based governance is like the model that our board has used to set up its guardrails and how we would conduct business. And I think it's awesome, but I also want to make sure that we center the human side. And I think we're able to be more accountable to that by having folks who are actually in the community where they can get constant feedback from the community about what the needs are and then apply it to how they create policy. To me, that is the most important thing to do. And that's how I intend to govern.
Any last words?
No, he did. Actually, I had 10 questions, and your opening statement, you answered all of them.
Okay. I'm sorry for going on my long little tangents.
It was perfect. So, yeah, good.
So we want to thank you for coming today, and thank your students for us also for you being here. And I know some of your board members out, Clayton, and your superintendent and all.
Yeah.
And you all been holding it together out there. I see.
You know, I will say, especially during the pandemic, like I was proud to be a Clayton teacher because Beasley made some courageous calls at that time when no one else was willing to. And honestly, that's the type of leadership that I'm gonna be looking for in a superintendent here in Atlanta. Someone willing to be courageous and do the right thing by teachers. You know, nowhere else, I think, in the Metro Atlanta area would I be able to be the out front teacher that I am. And feel safe while doing it about my job.
And feel safe, exactly.
Right, and that's the kind of comfort that I want to bring to teachers in Atlanta. The ability for them to teach the truth, the ability for them to make sure our kids are seen, the ability to make sure that those divisive topics, barriers, are not things that guide how they show up in the classroom. I want to make Atlanta a safe haven for teaching the truth and reaching our babies. That's my goal.
Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Shivy. It's always a pleasure to meet you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.